One of those important lessons that we learn growing up is that first impressions are absolutely crucial. This is certainly no different in classical music, whether it be in a social context or in an audition. But this lesson is almost exclusively aimed at the student generation and not towards the adults in the room. And in this video, I'd like to tell you two stories that affected my career in some way and show that it's just as important for us as teachers, as professional performers, or even music administrators to make a good first impression to those who may one day enter our profession. So, are you ready for this? It's morphin' time. Oh, and one more thing. 60% of you who tune into my channel regularly don't actually subscribe. And I know that this may not mean anything to you, knowing that YouTube will recommend you my videos anyway, but it really does matter to me that you hit the subscribe button. The number of subscribers I have directly influences my potential to develop more and better episodes. Bassoonists answer my emails quicker, they are more willing to do an interview, and more ideas are floated my way to produce interesting videos. So please hit that red button. Thanks. When I was 14, after I had only been playing the bassoon for a few months, I got a phone call from a youth orchestra in my city. I was asked if I would join the junior youth orchestra because they didn't have any bassoonists who had signed up that year. Let me be clear, I was not ready to accept this offer, but my teacher and my parents thought it would be a good experience, so I went ahead and I agreed to join for one season. I did do an audition, and it was clear that they were going to have to accept me whether I was up to their standard or not. The rehearsals were on Saturday mornings beginning at 9 a.m. And let's face it, I'm not a morning person. On the first day that I arrived, I walked into the rehearsal room pretty much at the time the rehearsal was supposed to begin, so around 9 a.m. I then was ripped into by the wind section leader, a respected teacher and professional musician, who told me that if I wanted to become a professional musician, then I had to arrive 15 minutes ahead of time so that the rehearsal could begin exactly at the allotted time. And I can understand that maybe she felt frustrated that I already wasn't up to the level of the rest of the group, and here I was showing up late, but in my mind, they had asked me for help. Needless to say, the way in which she decided to teach me this lesson about when a musician arrives for a rehearsal was rather humiliating for me, and I seem to remember her to have overdone it, and she told me off in front of all of my peers. I immediately got the feeling that even though I had been called upon by adults who were in need of my help, that they felt that it was perfectly appropriate to treat me in a way that I felt was disrespectful. There were one or two other minor incidents in this experience where I saw adults sound off at teenagers in a rehearsal context that didn't look good to me, but it was really this first experience about being told off publicly which didn't sit well. And in any case, I didn't really enjoy my time there, but I kept my commitment and I played with the orchestra for the whole season. And again, I was put into a situation which was way over my head in terms of technical demands, but they knew what they were getting into when they called me. And that experience turned me off from the traditional symphonic career. I was only 14 years old, and I was never really convinced after that point that I was going to become a professional bassoonist, as I understood that the only way a bassoonist could be a pro was for them to exist in an orchestra. Now luckily, about 5.5 years later, I was introduced to historically informed performance and the Baroque bassoon, and for the first time I was put into an environment which was made up exclusively of adults. And I found that there was so much passion and energy and joy in both the music making and in the music teaching. It was really quite an exciting time for me, and I got the chance to meet a whole bunch of different historical musicians whose CDs I owned and whose careers I was following. But there was one interaction in particular that really made an impression on me as I began my studies in the Baroque bassoon. I went to see a very well-respected musician and bassoonist so that I could take a lesson. And I had been preparing for this lesson for weeks. I had picked some difficult repertoire, and I wanted to show off what I had developed into at that point. Unfortunately, however, this person was not interested in listening to what I was playing. Although I was there ostensibly for a 60-minute lesson, I might have performed for about 15 minutes in total. The entire lesson was spent with this musician trying to convince me to buy another instrument. It was as if trying to teach me was pointless unless I did just that, Or at least that was the feeling that was imparted onto me. And after the lesson was over, I was really crestfallen. Indeed, it was really difficult for me to take any advice from them because I felt that they had disrespected my time and effort. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that this event changed the career trajectory, but it certainly made a strong impression. And it also really made me appreciate the time I had with Mathieu Dussier, with whom I studied Baroque bassoon during my bachelor's, as he cared most of all that I worked hard towards my lessons with him, that I focused on being the best musician possible, and that I made the most pleasant sound to listen to as possible. You know, hard work and results. That was the pathway to the profession, not to own a particular instrument. I do accept that there may have been good intentions behind that pressure I was feeling in that lesson to buy a different instrument. I was going to hit a ceiling at a certain point in my development at that moment because I was playing on an original instrument. But the way in which the advice was presented was to sort of shut me down. Now, these are simply two examples, but I felt that they were crucial moments in my development which involved a negative first impression in the reverse sense, where the teacher or the respected musician or professional was the one who sort of failed the student, rather than the student failing to make a good impression upon their superior. And I have to say that even though these two events may have led me down a different path than the traditional one when it comes to being a professional bassoonist, I do feel somehow that I'm living my best life here in Switzerland. Maybe there's an alternative universe out there where I'm holding a job in a big symphony orchestra, but I'm not entirely sure that I would be the musician that I am in this one. But what I want to say is that I hope that you are receiving this message that we, the professionals of today, have a responsibility to impart our own passion and joy upon the next generation, and we must do so by making good first impressions upon them ourselves. Who knows, our behavior might change the trajectory of a young person's career one day. Anyway, it's just a thought. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to please consider supporting my online work by becoming a patron by Patreon or by making an order at bassoons.ch. See you. Take it easy. Bye-bye.